Welcome to World Folktale Treasures, where we journey through the hidden corners of the world to uncover stories that spark the imagination and stir the soul. Today, we venture deep into the frozen wilderness of the north, where a hunter's peaceful life is forever changed by the arrival of two mysterious guests. So, gather close and let the tale unfold. In the heart of a vast, snow-covered forest, where the trees stood tall and silent like ancient sentinels, there lived a skilled hunter with his wife and young child. Their lodge, a sturdy shelter of wood and hides, stood alone, far from any other soul, surrounded by the endless wilderness. It was a life of solitude, but one filled with contentment and peace. Each day, the hunter ventured deep into the woods, his breath visible in the cold air, tracking the wild game that roamed the forest. He was a master of his craft, his arrows always finding their mark, and by nightfall, he would return home with the bounty of his labor, sharing tales of his adventures with his wife as they sat by the warm glow of the fire. But one evening, as winter's icy grip tightened on the land, the hunter was late returning home. The sky darkened and the forest, usually so full of life, seemed eerily still. His wife, a strong and patient woman, couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over her. She listened intently, her heart pounding in the silence, until at last, she heard footsteps crunching in the snow outside. Expecting her husband, she rushed to the door, but what she saw made her blood run cold. Standing there, bathed in the pale light of the moon, were two women, strangers in every sense. Their faces were gaunt, their skin as pale as the snow beneath their feet, and their hollow eyes seemed to hold the shadows of another world. Their clothes, tattered and worn, hung loosely on their thin frames, almost hiding them from view. Despite the fear that gripped her heart, the hunter's wife welcomed them in, as hospitality was sacred, even in these remote lands. The women entered silently, moving with a ghostly grace, and settled themselves in a dark corner of the lodge, far from the fire's warmth. They did not speak, did not remove their cloaks, and kept their faces hidden, leaving the wife to wonder who, or what, these visitors truly were. Hours passed, and the fire began to burn low, casting flickering shadows across the lodge. Just as the hunter's wife began to lose hope, the door creaked open, and her husband stepped inside, his face weary from the long day. But before she could greet him, the two strange women sprang forward, their movements unnaturally swift. They tore at the carcass of the deer he carried, greedily ripping off pieces of the whitest fat and devouring it with an almost desperate hunger. The hunter and his wife watched in stunned silence, their minds reeling with questions. Who were these women, and what kind of hunger drove them to such behavior? But even as unease settled into their bones, they said nothing, respecting the ancient laws of hospitality that governed their lives. For 3 days, the pattern repeated. Each evening, the hunter returned with his catch, and each evening, the strange women devoured the best parts with a ravenous fervor. The wife, though growing more and more uneasy, held her tongue out of respect for their guests. But deep down, anger and frustration began to simmer, threatening to break through her calm exterior. On the 4th night, the hunter was late again, and the tension in the lodge was palpable. When he finally arrived, the women's behavior grew even more unsettling. They ignored the portions he had set aside for them and took what they wanted from the wife's share, their eyes never leaving her as they did so. The wife could no longer contain her anger. Her hands trembled as she clutched her blanket, her eyes narrowing at the women who had overstepped the boundaries of respect. Though she said little, her feelings were clear, and the atmosphere in the lodge grew thick with unspoken tension. The strange women noticed her shift in demeanor and retreated further into the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. That night, as the family lay in silence, the hunter could hear the soft, sorrowful sobs of the women echoing through the dark. He could bear it no longer. "Tell me," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "what is it that brings you such sorrow? Has my wife offended you, or have we failed in our duties as hosts?" The women's voices, when they spoke, were soft and ethereal, like the whispering wind through the trees. "You have treated us with kindness," they replied, "and we have no complaint against you. But we are not of this world. We are the spirits of your two sisters, sent by the Master of Life to test the sincerity of the living. We have heard the cries of those who mourn, and we came to see if their words were true. For 3 moons, we were given time to walk among the living, to test their patience and kindness. You passed our tests until now, but your wife's anger has revealed that our presence has become a burden. It is time for us to return to the land of the dead." The hunter and his wife listened in stunned silence as the spirits continued. "We did not come to harm you, but to see if your love and respect would endure even under the strain of our presence. We know our behavior was strange and challenging, but it was meant to test the strength of your hearts." As they spoke, the lodge seemed to grow darker, the fire flickering weakly as if struggling against an unseen force. The spirits' voices grew softer, fading like the last echoes of a distant song. "Before we leave," they said, "we bless you with health, prosperity, and happiness. Remember our visit, and let it be a reminder that love and kindness are the greatest strengths one can possess. Farewell, dear brother. Peace to your home." With those final words, the lodge was plunged into total darkness. The hunter and his wife heard the door creak open, then shut, and when they relit the fire, the strange women were gone, leaving only the memory of their eerie visit. In the years that followed, the hunter found that the spirit's blessing was true. His hunts were always successful, and his family grew strong and prosperous. The lessons of the spirits were never forgotten, and their story was passed down through the generations, a reminder of the power of kindness, even in the face of the unknown. And so, the hunter and his family learned that even in the darkest of times, patience, love, and respect can light the way. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mysterious North. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more folktales from around the world. Until next time, may your path be filled with light and wonder.